Well, explosions heard in the capital of Ukraine today after peace talks with Russia continue to dead end. Russia continuing to target Ukraine's infrastructure with sounds of explosions heard throughout Kyiv.
Joining us now, retired Brigadier General for the U.S. Air Force and Newsmax contributor Blaine Holt. General, welcome and thanks for coming on. What do these ongoing attacks tell us about the state of the war right now?
It's great to be with you both. So what we always knew would happen is as they're getting closer on both sides to actually sitting down and talking about what a settlement is, militarily this can make it an even more dangerous proposition because both militaries will look to secure as many gains as they possibly can. What you're seeing right now is a horrific display of Russian power with 120 missiles, a combination of cruise missiles from sea and land, and then these suicide drones wreaking havoc on what's left of the Ukrainian grid. Very, very dangerous.
Blaine, how come peace talks continue to dead end here? Why can't both sides come to an agreement on what to do and how to put this situation to an end?
Well, they're not so much at a dead end as they're doing posturing in advance of whatever the sit down is going to be. What we'd like to see is a ceasefire and no preconditions, and everybody sit down and talk. To your point, Mike. But the impasse is literally going to be the Russians will say we want these 4 oblasts that we say are ours, and Crimea has already been ours. And then on the Ukrainian side, their point is, oh no, you're leaving the entire country of Ukraine, and we will be a sovereign nation. Then you've got externals like Kissinger, who wrote, this is what it should look like. Give them 2 oblasts and you're a NATO member. And then Lavrov saying, no, if it comes to that, we'll just have the Russian army solve this. But what we're seeing and what we haven't seen in most of the war is there's talk about what it could look like. And both capitals are desperate to get an off-ramp to this war because, Mike, it's just not sustainable.
Right. Even though with the addition of U.S. support, U.S. military equipment making its way over, billions of dollars worth, how does that make an impact on Ukrainian fighting efforts?
So, Emma, that's a great question. What this does is it helps in 2 ways. You've got the promise of a lot of resources coming out of the United States to backstop Zelensky's leverage in any kind of future negotiation. But at the same time, we don't really have any accountability for that money and how it's going to be spent. In fact, what we're seeing now is President Zelensky is going to be likely attending in some fashion the World Economic Forum and partnering up with BlackRock to examine how these funds are going to be utilized for reconstruction. So a lot of murkiness here, but this does strengthen the Ukrainian position to get the Russians to the table.
Blaine, some of this technology, this weapons technology we're sending over to Ukraine, I mean, this is pretty advanced stuff. How are the folks who are going to be using this on the ground in Ukraine, where are they getting the knowledge to be able to utilize this technology? Are they meeting in Poland? How are we explaining how to use some of this gear? Because unless you're trained in the U.S. military, I'm just trying to understand how we get that over to Ukraine with the wherewithal to use it.
Right. Well, you make a great point. They are going outside of Ukraine to go get training on various weapon systems. Patriot, that's kind of a fixed battery. It takes 90 people to run a Patriot system. It won't come overnight for them to have the skill sets to employ that appropriately. So that's going to be a longer term thing. What I'm concerned about is some of the very high-tech things that they're talking about, which is joint directed attack munitions or GPS smart weapons or small diameter bombs. They'll learn how to use those, but the concern I have is technology transfer if the Russians and then eventually the Chinese get their hands on that technology as a facet of this war.
Wow. A lot of training goes into play. Let's dive into a 10-part peace plan. Ukrainian President Zelensky releasing it. Again, likely this is what the Ukrainian forces would like to happen to end this war. Some things that stand out: nuclear safety, food security, energy security, release of all prisoners, Ukraine's territorial integrity, withdrawal of Russian troops, special tribunal, environmental protection, escalation of conflict prevention, and confirmation of the war's end. Is there anything that could be agreed upon in that? Do you see something standing out?
Sure. I think that release of all prisoners, food security, energy security are all in play for a real peace post conflict resolution period. But there's several poison pills. And there's always several poison pills in any pre-negotiation that if these were enacted and if Russia signed up for them, it would be the elimination of the Putin government. And so the Russians are never going to sign up for tribunals. They're never going to sign up for, we'll give up our government and do this. So, but the important part is they're putting a mark on the wall. And Lavrov has put a mark on the wall. These are good things because it means we can now get to a place where we can go, okay, we know what ridiculous looks like. Let's get to a place where we can get close to alignment. And again, back to the logistics of both sides don't have the ability to go on for years at this level of warfare. So they're looking at the pressure points on both. Putin's certainly under pressure by his inner circle and China. They have reasons to get to a table.
All right.
And you mentioned, Blaine, the energy security in Ukraine with all of these attacks. General, what is the state of Ukraine's energy grid right now?
It's absolutely horrific. Kiev was nearly completely knocked offline last night. It's very difficult now with the parts and supply chain to get more transformers in, more ceramics. And all this talk about the Russians running out of missiles just doesn't seem to be true. And they're just going to keep popping away at it and using the winter to their advantage. And so it's very dangerous for them. Our hearts go out to the Ukrainian civilians who are so resilient. They're filled with grit, and they're very determined in the face of a very ferocious adversary.
Yeah, more than 300 days of war now. Again, it started at the end of February for 2022. We're about to enter the new year. Brigadier General Blain Holt, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.